Here we go.
We are here, and it is now. It is Fight IQ, brought to you by RotoWire. And if you are seeing a little bit of a different screen, it is because our fearless leader and host, Sean, is a little bit under the weather, asked me to graciously take on hosting duties as well as analysis. Me being the team player that I am, as you see, a scratchy throat for me as well. But I accepted to do it, and with me, as always, is Joe. He would not leave my side, and I appreciate that. So let's get right into it. Joe, we're going to talk about the card in a second. In fact, let me just go ahead and do some business first. See, I'm not Sean, folks. I got a lot of learning to do, but we're getting there. For 10 days free trial, RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/free. No credit card required. All of our premium content for 10 days. Now we can get into the card. It is
UFC. Wait, Chris, 1 minute before we get into the card. It wasn't our intent to do a two-man pod. We did look for some subs to fill the big shoes of the DFS sniper. You and I talked about this, and because Sniper is laid up predominantly due to the wildfires in Canada, we were looking for a Canadian national to actually sub, and unfortunately, my first choice, a very competent, analyst named Monique, is on vacation and is actually in Vancouver. And she was not sure she was going to get back from the weigh-ins in time to do this. So we'll have her on another time. So at that point, you and I said, let's just do this as a two-man pod, and we'll hold the fort down for Sean.
Yeah, I tweeted out this is going to be more like a fireside chat, a little more intimate.
Yes.
Not the Taskmaster Sean is not here to move us along when he thinks we're being a little too long-winded. So we're going to be here to talk a little bit, and we'll see how this goes. Lunatics running the asylum. Let's have at it. So
let's
now
just remember to give the salaries out, Chris, before each fight. I listened to the last pod, and we forgot on a couple of fights to give out the salaries.
All right, man. This isn't my first rodeo. Relax.
I know. I got you.
Okay. All right. No, but that is a good note, because sometimes in the midst of everything, and there's a lot going on, and we do forget. And I will not. But first, I am gonna do an intro if it kills me. So UFC 289. We're here for this card. We got very, very strong co-main and main events in Amanda Nunes Aldana, and of course Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush. Not so much below that from a fan perspective, but how are you looking at this from a DFS perspective, Joe?
Yeah, it's look. I think you have to set your flag, and that's like the main and the co-main, and you have to take some chances to be different, because there's some, what I think at least are fairly obvious underdogs on this slate, which I think will get a decent amount of ownership. There's a couple of coin flip fights. Unfortunately, with 11 fights, you don't have the luxury of saying, I'm going to completely pass, unless you're mass entering, right? I honestly think this is a pretty good cash card, but 11 fights, very disappointing for a pay-per-view. You would think that the UFC would have a few fights in their back pocket that they could have added. I would have liked to have seen, a 13-fight card, maybe a 14-fight card. I mean, it is a pay-per-view. It is the first foray into Canada in a while. Honestly, they, as we get through this card, they didn't really even do the Canadian fighters, a lot of service in terms of the matchups that they gave them. I mean, so this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and as you allude to, we lost one fight. We got a late replacement who's just coming in on a debut, about 2 weeks' notice. But we will get to all that. Let's kick off the fights now. Our first fight is Diana Velveeta I guess I should start with, I don't know if I call her favorite, because I think the line is about to pick him. Maria Oliveira, 8,200 versus Diana Velveeta at 8,000. The line on this fight, Velveeta minus 120. Maria Oliveira can be had at plus 100. And for me, Maria Oliveira is a fighter with a lot of good attributes. She's lanky. She's athletic. She doesn't know what to do with any of it. You saw the fight with Vanessa Demopoulos, where Demopoulos basically just started winging overhands, caught her with one, sent her to the ground. When that wasn't happening, it was all grappling all the time. Oliveira had a hard time getting off her back. We should commend her, I guess, for almost getting a finish there in the third round, pouring on some pressure when Demopoulos got tired. But I actually think Velveeta is a pretty good, meat and potatoes boxer, kind of wrestle grappler. And that's exactly the kind of opponent that Oliveira's had trouble with. I don't really see her using her weapons well, and I don't really see her getting off of her back when she gets taken down. So those two things together, I have to go with Velveeta here. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, so this is a pretty low-level women's fight, about as low level as it gets. There is a small amount of line value here in Velveeta. There is late money coming in. She's now minus 125. You can get her at 8K. I do think she's the slightly better fighter, has a little bit more ground game upside versus Oliveira, who, to your earlier point, doesn't really know what to do with her athleticism. With that said, would I be shocked if, Oliveira went out and just sparked her? No, I could see that happening on either side. I do think that Oliveira is more likely for the knockout, which is why maybe you want to have a few shares of her. But there's odds value, there's line value. I think there's some grappling upside on Velveeta, so it's not a super confident pick. But again, with 11 fights, and if you're mass entering to win the 200K, this is one of those fights that you're going to have to play. So I'm on Velveeta as well. I don't love the fight. I don't love the pick, but I'm going to give me the odds value and I'll play that.
Yeah. See, I think I like Velveeta a little more than you do, just because I think grappling upside is very real. And I think that, unless she's really changed something in the past, I don't know when that last fight was, 6 months with, Demopoulos, but I can see this being rinse and repeat and grapple control. So from that perspective, but I do wonder why Diana's nickname is not Shells and Cheese. And if I ever get a chance to ask her, I will. But let's go on to the next fight. I thought that was funnier than that, but apparently not. Okay.
Okay, Chris.
But, come on, Velveeta, Shells and Cheese. All right.
Velveeta.
I know, but it's a play on words. Okay,
understood,
we're moving on.
Understood, Chris. Where's Sean Roney?
Okay. Yeah, I know exactly. You can't just let me off the leash like this. It's no good.
By the way, Nick, both of these women have exactly 2 takedowns apiece in the UFC. So I think the perception is that Velveeta has more grappling upside, which is likely true, but it's not like she's, the second coming of Marab. Let's not put that out there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So next fight, David Dvorak at 9,400 versus Steve Erceg at 6,800. Erceg was the fighter I was alluding to in the open there. Less than 2 weeks notice on the debut here as a short notice. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take him. I'm taking Erceg here. I don't know what Dvorak has done in the octagon to get this kind of line against anybody. He's agile. He's quick. He's got some power for the division. That hasn't really amounted to much, especially the speed. All he generally tends to do is skirt along the outside of the octagon. And Erceg is sort of a dogged grappler. He's going to look for his takedowns. He's going to look for his submission attempts. And Dvorak almost got his arm taken off by Manel Kape in the last fight. If the round didn't expire, he was certainly being submitted. I just can't trust David Dvorak to give me enough consistent offense. And I think at the very least, Erceg is going to get ahead on judges' scorecards by being the busier fighter here. I'm not taking Dvorak. I think it's a dogger pass. I know it's a late replacement, but you know what? I at least like Erceg's skill set and game plan. So I'm going to take a flyer here. Joe, how crazy am I?
Yeah, look, I wish I could get behind that. It would open up a world of possibilities in lineup construction if you could go with the dog here. This is a prototypical James Tahuna fight where, his last 2 fights against Kape and Nicolau, he got beat up, right? He got beat up, but he didn't get finished. against two superior quality fighters. His first 3 fights in the UFC, he won. Silva, Espinosa, and Ronderos. With that said, his high score was 94.3. I don't see laying 9.4. You're really banking on an early finish because he's not a high volume guy, right? One of his wins is by sub. That's where he broke 90 points against Ronderos. But his win against Silva was 74, and his win against Espinosa was 57.5. So I think it's a very risky play. If you're playing Dvorak, you are banking on an early finish. You're banking on maybe octagon jitters for the dog here. You're banking on the fact that, this is a seasoned UFC fighter who's been in against better versus a guy that's coming in off of the Australian regional scene, right? So, again, he hasn't, the underdog has not looked horrible on tape, but again, Australian regional scene, flying to Vancouver to take this fight. Dvorak has been in versus better, even though he's lost 2 of his last 2 fights, but he does have 3 UFC wins. So as a pick, I'm going to have to play Dvorak. I'm not going to play him much on DraftKings. I'll take a sprinkle just because of that potential first round KO or first round upside or sub. But honestly, I like Miranda under him and I like Nunes above him a hell of a lot more. So I'm not sure how high owned he's going to be. And if people are playing purely by betting lines, he'll get some ownership, but I intend to be much lower on him than pretty much anyone in that range.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about the 11 fights, right? Although I am picking Usyk, he's going to be a big dog that is Dvorak probably without much ownership, because most people are probably going to think like us, like, what has he done? There's better people right next to him. But, if he does finish off the underdog because, like you said, he's over anxious or he gets tired or he's just an Australian regional fighter, which would be reason enough. I think that could pay off and maybe get some scarcity. So something to pay attention.
Look, if you get Usyk home, that is going to open up such great lineup constructions.
Right? Oh no! I meant Dvorak here, just as the contrarian pay up. Yeah. Just because people are gonna. But I do like Usyk here. I do think that there's value on each side, because I think if Usyk wins, I think it's going to be grapple heavy. And look, Dvorak can spark him out, because you said Australian regional fighters, not the best. So I do think there's potential on both sides here, but I tend to agree with you that in general it's a dog or pass. I'm just a little bit more heavy on the dog than I think you are.
Understood.
All right, so the next fight here is Blake Builder at 9,000 taking on the monster Kyle Nelson at 7,200. Line on this fight: Blake Builder at -250, Kyle Nelson at +200. And I guess I'm just always going to take these first so I can throw them to you. So
go for
everybody's just going to be able to hear me talk first, which is fine, I guess. But like, to me, this is I think pretty much every fight has not been a great fight for Kyle Nelson. I think he has a win and a draw, but I think this kind of matchup in particular is not that good. Kyle Nelson, he likes to out-muscle people and out-wrestle them, and that's not going to happen against Blake Builder. Blake Builder is a really strong wrestler, not the most dedicated finisher on the regional scene, but very strong, very good wrestler, as I say. Does have some power, and we've seen Kyle Nelson get tired in fights. This might be another one that guys will look, because he wasn't necessarily that impressive, especially early in his UFC debut. Kind of took him a while to get going here, but I think there's too much wrong with Kyle Nelson, too many flaws here. I think Builder can kind of walk over him, if provided he uses his wrestling, and Nelson is going to get in his face, so that might incur some more action here. I like Builder a little bit here at 9,000. I think it's a cheap enough price, and Kyle Nelson is liable to blow up. So I'm taking Builder. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take here. This is a Canadian. We got Kyle Nelson, Canadian fighter here. this is a winner go home fight. His record has been abysmal. In the UFC, the last time he won a fight was against Polio Reyes, where he KO'd him in the first round. So he's essentially won one of his last 5 fights. Again, not a stellar record. Coming off of 2 losses, he's on this fight because he's on this card because he's Canadian, and he is he needs a win. He's going to have a size advantage over Bilder. I actually like his floor here, which is why I am going to pick him to potentially upset Bilder. But irrespective of that, I think he's an interesting cash play at 7.2K. I mean, he's got takedown equity. He's going to have the crowd behind him. And if you look at some of his losses, his floor has not been awful in his losses at 7.2K, right? If you're plugging this guy in cash, and, he scored 40, he had a draw in his last fight, and he scored 46.8 DraftKings points. He lost to Jai Herbert, 24.8 points, not great. He got KO'd by Billy Q in the 3rd round, put up 26 points. Look, I mean, give me 40 to 50 points with takedown equity, with the possibility of a win at 7.2K. I don't hate that play. So this is gonna be my my first underdog pick here. Is I'm gonna go with Kyle Nelson in Canada.
It's not that I can't see it. It's just that I don't know what kind of opponent he wins against exactly. Except Polo Reyes just sort of a glass cannon, and everybody else has been, he's been subbed, he's been knocked out, he's lost every which way. So I understand it. I get that. A, you're looking for dogs, and B, you got takedown upside and some floor there. I might have a few, but I think Bilder could either walk away with it, or you know what, it could be another fight where they look at each other.
By the way, both these guys are the same age, believe it or not. They're both 32, and Bilder is undefeated. He's never lost.
Right. Yeah.
And that is pro or amateur. So that's something to think about. I mean, he was a slight underdog against Young. He got into the UFC based off his performance in the Contender Series, where he rear naked choked Alex Morgan. He was in plus 180 underdog there as well. So, he's been an underdog in his last 2 fights, going into the UFC. So I don't know. I mean, to me, 7.2K, 9K, there are guys I just like more at that price range. So I'm going to take the stab at 7.2K on Kyle Nelson. And again, particularly I like his floor, which is why I think he makes a decent cash play.
Yeah, I totally get it. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have, as I scroll down, we have Ayman Zahabi. I'm sorry, I should go the other way again. We have Arichi Lang versus Ayman Zahabi. Arichi Lang can be had at 8,300. Ayman Zahabi at 7,900. Line on this fight is Arichi Lang at minus 120. Ayman Zahabi plus 100. So couple of close ones coming up here and in the rear view. But this one, it's hard for me to get a great read on it. I went with Arichi Lang in my picks and my article just because of the takedown upside and because of how inconsistent Zahabi has been in his UFC tenure. I feel like he's a fighter who thrives on his athleticism, and if you can close him down like Arichi Lang is going to and pressure him, you can have some success. So that's my rationale for the Arichi Lang pick. It's not very strong. I do like the takedown upside. I do like the strength of Arichi Lang and the toughness, as we've seen before. I really think, I had never really thought about it this way too much before, but it makes a lot of sense to put fighters in terms of, round winners and moment winners as categories of fighters. And I think Ayman Zahabi is, without a doubt, a moment winner. You saw his big win with the spinning back fist knockout there. I think if he wins, his win condition looks a lot more like that, whereas opposed to Arichi Lang can grind out rounds with wrestling and clinch control and stuff like that. So I'm taking a Richie Lang here, and it might be worth a stab to, have one of these guys right in the mid-range here. I'm going to go with the wrestling upside. I'm going with the Richie Lang. And Joe, how you seeing this one here?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a fight that I probably, if there weren't 11 fights in the card, this is another one which I would not have a lot of exposure to. For those who don't know, Amanda Zahabi, one, he's not very active. Two, he's the brother of the infamous or famous Faraz Zahabi of TriStar fame. He's his brother. I'm sure his brother will be in his corner. He is what I would call a typical TriStar point fighter, right? He's not super active. He's got some level of technical ability. I think there's a small amount of line value in his price at 7.9K versus 8.3K for a Richie Lang. A Richie Lang is going to come at him. So if Zahabi is patient, he could hit him. What's interesting about Lang is, he won his last two. He lost his first two UFC fights against Molina and Cody Durden. Was respectable. I mean, he didn't get finished. He lost them by decision. He put up 66 points in a loss against Molina, put 35 points in a loss up against Durden, which is good. His last fight, he won against Perrin, 64 points. And then, the creme de la creme, against Elsie, he put up 125 points. So he obviously got the early finish bonus. So I guess, and I don't expect that Zahabi is going to be finished early. He's just too technical a fighter. But for potential upside and a safe floor, I'll play a Richie Lang. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. And because the line value is going against him, I think Zahabi will probably be higher owned, not by much. But, I'm going to go with the Richie Lang here. Maybe I'll get lightning in a bottle, go back to that 125-point performance. He was 9.1K on that day, and this is a superior opponent. But, give me a Richie Lang here. It's a very lukewarm pick. GPP play. I don't know that I touched this in cash, but I'll take a Richie Lang in GPPs. I'll have a few shares as a hobby for the line value, but a Richie Lang for the win.
So Alan is here from your fan club, but I thought this was the more important comment, and I agree. And thank you very much there, Alan. I hope you're enjoying the show, and thank you for listening. I think, to your point that, I called Zahabi a moment winner because of that one knockout win that he has. But to your point, this is a guy who got a knockdown and scored 58 points in a win. So
right,
even if there was some kind of line value on Zahabi, I don't know if I'd go there. The wins so far that don't include that spinning back fist are 58 and 52. So that's kind of a tough fill there. And right. Like you said, Zahabi has that upside. I'm sorry, Zahabi does not. Well, everybody has some upside, I suppose. But Richie Lang has that upside, and I'm going to go for it. I might be a little heavier than you are just because I like the activity. I like the wrestling. But we'll see how it shakes out. And we will also move on to the next fight now, which is Miranda Maverick at 9,300 taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. That will have to do at 6,900. Line on this fight, Maverick can be had for minus 300 now, and Jasudavicius at plus 240. I'm going to go ahead and say that line's about right. I think that, Maverick's losses, one to Blanchfield, that looks really good in retrospect, and one to Macy Barber that was not a loss. And Macy Barber tends to be doing that a lot lately. I just think that this is a battle of two grapplers, and one is better than the other. And so the one who's better than the other is going to get a grappling game working. She's also probably the better striker. I would say at least the more active striker and the more willing to throw in combination. So I like that. More aggressive. I just don't see a whole lot in Jasudavicius here. I'll say this much. If you're going for a sub 7,000 fighter, go with Ursig and not Jazz Duvicius. Okay, I just said her name 4 different ways.
What if
all
you
of
call
them
her
wrong,
Jasmine?
I'm sure.
Just call her Jasmine.
Jasmine is good. Jazzy. My friend Jazzy. Okay, so my pick is very straightforwardly Miranda Maverick here. I don't think it will be any different, but let's find out. Joe, what do you think about this one?
No, I mean, I think, look, I think what the concern here is how much of Maverick do you want and how much can you play based on your lineup constructs? Like, Maverick is pretty expensive, right? With that said, she's put up really good scores in the past. But are you going to play, more of Maverick than Nunes? I mean, she's 9,300. Dvorak is 94 and Nunes is 95, right? She's $200 more expensive than Ige, right? We haven't talked about that fight yet. Again, in terms of Jazzy J, this is yet another Canadian that the UFC has done no favors to. I don't know if the matchmaker had, something against Canadians here, but like I expect Miranda Maverick to just wrestle F her here. She's stronger. She's a better wrestler. She really is pretty much better everywhere. Striker, her only real loss, forget about that Macy Barber debacle, which she won. Her only real loss is against the future champion, in my girl from New Jersey, Erin Blanchfield. Maverick has been fighting since she was 19 as well. She's 25 now. She's coming into her prime. I really like Maverick in this fight. I think she is an excellent cash play. I would definitely, maybe team her up with Nunes in cash, especially if you're going the other way in the co-main. I like Maverick a lot here. You have to decide how much of Maverick you're going to be able to play, but I clearly think she's your winner here. My only concern is that I think the most likely outcome of this fight is by decision, unless Jazzy J is just that much worse than we all believe. In which case it's not beyond the realm of possibility that, MM will get a finish here. But I like a Maverick, whichever way this fight goes, unless Maverick, trips going into the octagon. I don't see how she loses this fight. The biggest decision is how much of her you're going to play and how she's going to work in your lineup constructs.
All right, and before we move on, let's say hi to our friend Nan, who is here watching us. We appreciate it. We haven't seen you in a while, or at least you haven't made your presence known. I don't know if you've been here, but good to see you now, and enjoy the show.
Nan's the smartest guy I know.
I'm sitting right here, Joe. All right. Next fight up. I won't make you respond to that. Next fight up is Nasruddin Imavov at 8,500, taking on Chris Curtis at 7,700. Line on this fight, Imavov can be had at -160. Come back on Chris Curtis, +135. Now, we talk about fights with 11. You can't really skip too many, but this might be one of them that I want to skip. Imavov is, I think, going to get a lot of work done here with his footwork and his agility, while Chris Curtis kind of gets stuck in the mud, as he often does, trying to work himself into the fight. And by the time he does, the fight is over, and then he's complaining about it on Twitter. But I do think that Imavov is going to have the agility advantage here. I don't think the wrestling's going to matter. I still believe, and I haven't checked, but I still believe Chris Curtis 100% takedown defense rate in the octagon. So that is something to consider. I don't think he's going to get finished. I think he's a tough guy. He did take an accidental headbutt and came back and won third round against Gastelum, even though a judge didn't think so, because who knows why. But I like this fight as a fight to watch, maybe even a fight to bet on. For taking Imavov, certainly not my favorite DraftKings fight. I'll have some because, as you say, Joe, hard to completely fade anything with 11. But let's just say this is one of my least favorite. What do you think about
give the salaries real quick? We got Imavov at 8.5K. We got the action man Chris Curtis at 7.7K. I'm tempted to call Chris Curtis the whiner, but he'll probably block me, even though I don't follow him. That wasn't a good luck in the last fight against Gastelum. I don't think he was going to win that fight anyway. Imavov's interesting. He's a Dagestani who trains in France at the MMA factory, which is kind of interesting. Lost his last fight against Sean Strickland. Looks like he's had a couple of canceled fights. Let me just bear with me real quickly. It looks like he was actually supposed to fight, interestingly enough, Kelvin Gastelum. So he is 3-2 in the UFC. It looks like. No, actually, sorry, he goes back a little further than that. He beat Jordan Williams. I don't know why I forgot that. He's actually 4-2 in the UFC, having lost his last fight to Sean Strickland in January. I guess I like him here. I mean, I think he's got some advantages. I don't know, man. I think this is a quick turnaround for Curtis. I don't love Imavov here. I mean, like you said, Curtis has got pretty good takedown defense. Not that, Nasruddin is a prolific takedown artist. He didn't get any takedowns in his fight against Strickland. I think the most he's ever gotten in a fight is 2. I fully expect this fight to really be standing. It could be a really boring, low-scoring fight. It's hard to get comfortable laying 8.5K. You could get Dariush for $100 more. You could go down $100 and get Barrio. I don't expect to have a lot of this fight. I'll probably have more Curtis just based on the line, based on the salary. But if you're asking me to pick a winner, I guess I'll pick Nasruddin. Would it surprise me if Curtis won? No. But I guess I'll take Nasruddin here. I think the turn time on Curtis is too short. Maybe the line tightens up. I don't know. But this is not a fight I expect to have a lot of.
Yeah, me either. And, I would have an easier time picking Curtis if he would just do some stuff once in a while, early in fights. Right. Because you look at that fight with Sean Strickland, and all he basically does is throw a jab, and he beat Nasruddin. So you would think that Curtis could do the same thing, but if he falls too far behind, then it's too late. So I'm with you. I think could end up being a boring fight. My pick is going to be slight Nasruddin, but I don't mind going with the 7,700 there as well. Let's move on to the next fight. It is the aforementioned Marc-Andre Barriault at 8,400, taking on who's he taking on? He's taking on Eric Anders at 7,800. Line on this fight. Let's get there real quick. Is -135 for Marc-Andre Barriault, +115 for Eric Anders. And for me, in this fight, look, this is coming off a fairly unique situation, I think, in low-level middleweight, which is both guys looked really good in their last fight. Barriault got the stoppage against Julian Marquez there, who's really tough and really hard to put away. And Eric Anders got a really emphatic second-round stoppage there against Kyle Daukaus. I think Anders is improving. I think his striking is improving. I think his finishing is definitely improving. His aggressiveness and willingness to attack. But I think, big muscly guy. And I couldn't stop thinking about, while I was prepping for this fight, his fight against Thiago Santos. I know it's upper weight class. I know all that stuff. But exhausted, couldn't get back to the stool at the end of round 4. Fight had to be called. Marc-Andre is the power bar. He's going to really wear on guys. He's going to really make it physical. Doesn't wrestle so much, but hangs on you, throws to the body, really gets you up in the clinch there. Again, a lot of muscle on Anders. I think he makes Anders tired, and I think he finishes Anders late. So my pick has got to be Barriault. I like this fight both ways. I do think Anders has a shot here. But you got to remember, Barrio got finished. I think just Chidi and Njokuani is the only one, at least in the UFC. And just really a fast, powerful kickboxer, way different fighter than Eric Anders. I just like the game plan here. I think it suits Barrio really well. So my pick is Barrio. Joe, what do you think about this one?
I like it the other way. I mean, I like it. I actually like Anders quite a bit here. I think he's looked good in his last 2 fights, actually. Now, I heard it says on Tapology that he's with Fight Ready, and I know he was with Fight Ready for his last camp, but I thought I heard someone say he moved over to the MMA Lab, which is big main competitor of Fight Ready in Arizona. Don't know if that's true or not. Maybe someone could confirm that. Why coming off, a great win, would you just switch camps? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I like him here. I like him here a fair bit. He's been doing some grappling as well. He did lose a grappling match to Joe Pfeiffer. But I like that he's keeping active. If he's still with Fight Ready and Santo DeFranco, I think that's a good camp for him. They're very good at putting together game plans for fights. I don't think this is he's fought so much better fighters than Barrio has. And you're giving me him as a dog at what, 7.9K? I don't think we gave the salaries.
7-8. Chat, can you let me know? Hang on. Can we get like a thumbs up if I gave the salaries? I could swear I gave the salaries.
I don't think you did.
Unless I'm losing my mind.
I wasn't paying attention.
I think
Barrio's 8.4K and 7.8 for Anders. Line's tightening up a little bit. You've got Anders at what, plus 110 versus minus 130. Honestly, I think that line should be flipped. To me, I'll have a few shares of Barrio, but based off of his last fight, I really like Anders. I like that he's fought better. Seems like he's got his head on straight. I think he could certainly, he's working on his grappling, but he's entering grappling competitions. I think this is a good fight to have, to your point, Chris, to have some of both sides on. But in terms of lineup construction, I can do a lot more with Anders, obviously, at 7.8K. So I'm going to be much higher weighted on Anders. Haven't decided how many lineups I'm going to play yet. I usually don't do most of my building until Saturday for obvious reasons. So I like Anders quite a bit here. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think, excuse me, I think it opens up some nice possibilities in lineup construction by using Anders here, especially if you have one other dog, hint, co-main, that you could pair him with. Yeah, I like Anders here.
All right, folks, we are going to delve deeper into the main card. But before we do that, we're going to take a short break for our audio-only podcast listeners to pay some bills, and we will be right back. All right, and we are back. Joe, doesn't work if you make sounds during it, which is why I had to pause a little bit longer, but that's okay. We, as promised, we are going to delve deeper into this main card now with our next fight. Dan Ige at 9,100, taking on Nate Landwehr at 7,100. Those were the salaries, Joe, if you heard them. 9,100 and 7,100. Thank you, sir. Okay, so the line on this fight, Dan Ige can be had at minus 250, Nate Landwehr at plus 200. And I guess I have to go with the crowd here on this one, something I really don't like to do, but especially when fights are concerned. But I'm going to have to go with Ige here. Landwehr just too erratic, too all over the place, gets hit too much. And Ige is very solid, very crisp boxer, and dangerous. I mean, you don't think of Ige as a finisher, but his last wins have been dangerous. He got that nice knockout of Damon Jackson in round 2 last fight, put up 100 points there. Okay, so maybe not, slate breaking, but his last win before that, and he had some tough losses against some tough competition, but his last one before that Gavin Tucker, 125, and that was the quick win bonus. And then, okay, the one before that was Barbosa. He didn't have a strong showing there. He does have a 110 win against Danny Henry and a 132 win against Mike Santiago. I remember that fight because I was on Santiago. Very big mistake. But the point is, Ige does have some power potential, some point potential in DraftKings. I like this fight especially because we know that Landwehr is going to come after him. We know that Ige has all the technique. He can grapple a little bit as well if he needs to. I just think he's the complete package here. I don't think that Landwehr is going to be able to sort of surprise him in like a short burst of offense that he likes to do. And I like Ige here, at least in cash. And I do think he has some potential upside for that finish. So I like Dan Ige. Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, so obviously, after just completely mismatching him against the Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, and Elivev, they gave him Damon Jackson. I mean, so we pretty much know where Ige's ceiling is at this point in his career, right? Not to say he can't improve. We also know that, Ige is pretty important in Ali Abaziv's, organization. He's like an employee. He does a lot of work for him. He's a smart guy. But we kind of know where he is. We know where his, I don't want to call him a gatekeeper because, these aren't gatekeeper fights. I mean, they essentially gave him, 3 guys in the top 15 and then handed him Jackson and said, go to work. Right. They handed him Tucker after Calvin Kattar just put a clinic on his face. I mean, I remember seeing them in the airport together, and I don't know that I've seen a fighter walking that got more beat up than Ige did in that fight. What's going to be interesting about this fight and what makes me a little hesitant about playing Ige in cash as opposed to, say, a Miranda Maverick is, Landauer's going to go right in his face, right? Landauer. He's going to go right in his face. And not to say, and by the way, I'm not picking Landauer. I mean, but I do think at 7.1K, you need to have some shares, right? I think the way that he fights and, points that he's put up, in his last 2 fights against Austin Lingo and Onama, he scored 102 and 104. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. 2 of those fighters, at least on paper, are not bad fighters. Klein and Onama, who just, massively gassed. He beat Klein, put up 91 points, right? Not a good look against Arosa. He beat out, Elkins in a bit of a war. Again, 7.1K with a potential of 100-point upside. If he does what he does, I got to have a few shares of him. With that said, I'm picking Ige. This is the type of fighter that Ige should beat, right? And if he doesn't, then I'm not sure where he goes. Like if he wants to just be a gatekeeper, and they feed him prospects and let prospects test how good he is. But right now, what the UFC has been doing is they've been giving him really good fighters, and then they've been giving him not so good fighters. They haven't been throwing any prospects at him. So I'm going to have some shares of Landwehr. Obviously, lineup construction with a 7.1K fighter and GPPs, buys you a lot. But I also like Ige. I would just hesitate playing Ige in cash, where if you have $200 more, go up and play Maverick. Now, you're sacrificing some upside in GPPs because, he could get that bonus, if he sparks Landwehr, which is why I want to have a lot of them in GPPs. But as a cash play, I prefer Maverick. But give me Ige.
Right. And I should say, too, that I totally agree that at that cheap price there, the 7.1K, and the way that Landwehr fights, you have to have some of them. But I agree. The pick is certainly Ige. And all right, moving on. We have the battle of the prospects, I suppose. Mike Malott at 8,800 taking on Adam Fugit at 7,400. Line on this fight is Mike Malott at -210, Adam Fugit at +170. And I got to say, I think 8,800 is a really good price for Mike Malott here. I think he's got more tools, he's got speed, He throws in combination more. He can wrestle a little bit. I like all of that. I think Fugit is a little foot slow. I know that he is a good Muay Thai striker, which could have something to do with it. I know that Malott can get dinged up a little bit. Actually, right before he finished, I'm going to say Mike Perry, but not Mike Perry. Mickey Gall, he actually got hit pretty hard in that fight. So it's not that he's not hittable. He is. I just think his attributes and his skill set are going to carry him past a fighter like Fugit here. Be an interesting fight, be an intriguing fight, because this is one I think you have to have for DraftKings. I do think this one is going to finish one way or the other. And as I say, I'm going to take the toolsier fighter, at least in my view, and the one who has more athletic attributes. So give me Mike Malott. And Joe, you're awful quiet over there, which makes me think maybe a Fugit pick is coming.
No, I mean, I think where I was shaking my head is I think that, you know, everybody is seeing it the way you're seeing it, which is going to mean very high ownership. You know, this is the one matchup, you know, this is probably the best matchup for a Canadian fighter. And it's by no means a walkover. I mean, I think Fugit is going to put up a fight. But I think he's got a Canadian flag next to him, but okay. I think he's Canadian. Team Alpha Male. You know, people are going to be looking at, you know, that, you know, the point totals he put up in his last couple of fights, which were pretty impressive. And they're going to look at his salary at 8.8K and they're going to say, you know, plug and play, which, you know, you score 111.6 and 103.7. You know, you're getting a $400 salary downgrade off of, you know, his victory against Liness, you know, so you're getting him $400 cheaper. Now, again, Fugit, on the other hand, again, not, you know, 3 years older, American fighter, he put up 126 points at 7.1K against Kinoshita. Now, that was a first round KO, right? So that's what this guy brings to the table. I'm going to have a few shares of Fugit. I think he's going to be underowned. I think at 7.4K for GPPs, I think you should have a few shares of him. I think Malott is going to be very highly owned, so you're not really going to be differentiating yourself by playing a lot of Malott. But, you know, I see why he's going to be highly owned. I mean, you're getting a $400 salary break off of his last fight where he put up, what did I say, 103.7. I think he's going to be very highly owned. So, you know, if you want to differentiate yourself, play less. But I think that's kind of easier said than done.
Yeah. No, I totally get that too. To be clear, this is a both sides fight. This is one where you got to have both of them. And I take your point too that Malott is going to be highly owned. So if you're on Malott, if you like him like I do, you got to be really into him so that you can get some kind of leverage. Otherwise, it doesn't work because most people are probably going to have or close to the same amount as you are as a favorite that people are into. But no, I like Fugit as well, and he did get 4 takedowns against Kinoshita. I tend to think that was more situational, but we will see how that fight plays out. Okay, next fight up is we are into the co-main event. I won't call it the people's main event because I think that is disrespectful to my girl Amanda Nunes, but it is certainly a very good fight. It is Beneil Dariush at 8,600. Taking on Charles Oliveira at 7,600. The line on this fight is not that Oliveira, minus 150 for Beneil Dariush. Come back for Charles Oliveira plus 125. And if you heard me do a slight hesitation before reading those DraftKings salaries, it's because I still don't quite understand why Charles Oliveira is the underdog here. But so be it. But I think Charles Oliveira, we can't say one loss against one of the best fighters in the sport is going to be a wrecking thing where you're not going to respect Charles Oliveira anymore, especially since he may have just had an off night. His energy looked a little weird, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I still think Charles Oliveira is the same guy. I think he has the same skill set. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's the better jiu-jitsu player. I think if he's not the better technical striker, I think he's the better athlete. And so I think he can outpace Dariush if it comes to that. Now we have to address, and I think I'm certainly guilty of ignoring it for a long time, that Oliveira gets hurt quite a bit in fights. The problem in his last fight, he could not just sort of sit on his back and hope that his opponent wouldn't come into his guard. And we have a similar situation here. Dariush is not going to be afraid. If Dariush hurts him, Dariush is going to come right into his guard. But look, Dariush is hurtable too. You know, we all remember his fight with
Close.
Who was that?
Car
Close. Thank you very much. Yeah. So definitely very hittable and very much into getting into wars, which I think
Drew Dober. Drew Dober.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, look, he can land a shot on Charles. There's no question about it. But I'm going to take the better athlete, the better wrestler, the better jiu-jitsu player. It wouldn't terribly surprise me if this fight devolved into, I wouldn't want to say devolved, but became a grappling match, as we saw in both of their fights with Tony Ferguson. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And if that happens, then I really like it, because I really think Charles Oliveira has the advantage. So again, a both side fight, one of the only fights on this card we can enjoy as DraftKings players and fans. I just have to take Oliveira here. I think he has too many advantages. Dariush is on a good run, but I think it ends here. Joe, how you seeing the co-main event?
Wow, it's amazing how much I actually agree with pretty much everything you said. I have a bet. I'll give the bet at the end. We have one more fight to go, but I also do not understand why Dvorak is the underdog here. I mean, there are some people that I respect a lot, like Technical Tim, who see this for Dariush. With all due respect, I don't see it that way. I think Dvorak has had better competition. He's fought better, and he got Islammed by Islam, and I don't know that the outcome would have been that much different for Dariush. The one thing I will say about Dariush, and by the way, I love Benny. I mean, I remember when people were picking James Vick to beat Beneil Dariush, and I was all over Dariush. I mean, that was such a great, and that was early in my days of playing MMA, and I'm like, you're picking James Vick to beat Beneil Dariush? Like, how does that work? And he wasn't like an overly active fighter at the time, but he was really, really good. So look, I'm happy that this is going to be a nice pay-per-view, fight for Beneil. He's going to get some money. I know he owns, I believe, a UFC gym in Orange County, or at least part of a UFC gym. He's trained at Kings for a long time. I am not sure if he is still at Kings with Master Rafael Cordero. Let me just confirm that real quick. But I think so. At 7.6K, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, he may be the highest owned fighter. He may be higher owned than Nunes. I mean, again, I am not an ownership guru. I leave that to other people. But at 7.6K for someone with his pedigree, coming off of a bad loss, it still shows that he's with Kings. I have to go with Charles here. I'm definitely going to have shares. And I will say one thing, I may be repeating myself here. Dariush is by far the smarter fighter. He gave an incredible breakdown of this fight. And included in his breakdown was the fact that he could get finished. And he admits that he could get finished. He could get knocked out. He doesn't believe that Charles is going to have any grappling advantages. He was fearful that he could potentially get caught with something, but not a submission. So, I love Beneil's intelligence. I think, obviously this is the fight. This is the people's main event. I mean, I certainly see one-way traffic in the next fight, and we can kind of talk about that quickly. But like, I really was looking forward to this fight. I was very upset that it was not on the New Jersey card, which is where it was originally scheduled to be. And I'm not sure why. But I was at that card. It was really great. That would have been the capper to have that fight on the New Jersey card. But okay. So at least now the people up in Canada get a good fight on a really pedestrian card. Give me Charles here.
Yeah, I agree, and it almost feels like a trap based on how
Doesn't it?
low the salary is. But I mean, what can we do if it turns out that way? It turns out that way.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'll have some Dariush anyway, so won't be going home.
Look, I don't like to
checking
lose
for
money.
the
I know when people say you'll be happy for a fighter if a fighter wins. I don't like to lose money, so I'll probably be
Yeah.
upset. But like if I
Right.
have to get beat by someone, I don't, be getting beat by Dariush. Like, okay, right? Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
always rather win, but like Dariush is just a nice guy, and he's made me so much money in the past.
Sure. All right, main event time, everybody. It is Amanda Nunes, the WMMA GOAT at 9,500, taking on Irene Aldana at 6,700. Line on this fight, Nunes can be had at -350, Irene Aldana at +260. And this fight, to me, I always look for, I don't subscribe to MMA math, of course, but I always try to look for corollary fights where it's like, well, what was this person's skill set and how did they do against them? And so I look at that Holly Holm fight. Number one, the strength was too much for her. She got, really outstripped in the grappling, bar none. It's not that Holly Holm took her down at will. I mean, she's not a wrestler, but when she had her there, she was able to control pretty substantially. The other thing is the footwork in that fight. Holm outlanded her pretty substantially. She couldn't deal with the athleticism. She couldn't deal with the speed. And so with all of that said, I can't hope that this is another, situation where Nunes is just going to run herself into a jab until she gets herself exhausted. I don't think that's ever going to happen again.
No.
I think that Nunes has too much athleticism here, too many skills. The grappling, I think she's too fast. I think she's got too much power. Not to say that Aldana has none, but I think that Nunes has more. I just think she's got too many tools here. And the primary weapon of Aldana's boxing is not going to be enough. No. So I'm picking Nunes here. I think she gets this done fairly comprehensively. I think if you can afford her, she's worth it in GPPs because I do think this one probably gets a finish. I don't see Aldana lasting 5 rounds here. The sticking point is how much he scores. I can see a 105, 107. Will that get it done on an 11 fight card? I tend to think it probably will. Results may vary, but a long-winded way of saying that my pick here is Amanda Nunes. Joe, how do you see the main event?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said. I mean, the one word that I have to stress here is wrestling. That is where, of all the advantages that Nunes has, that is her biggest advantage in this fight is wrestling. And that would probably be the one that would tire her out the least. Get ground control time, do ground and pound, maybe sink a sub in. That is probably her easiest path to victory here. I'm not sure why Pena pulled out. Did we ever find out why Pena pulled out from the trilogy fight?
I think it's some kind of injury. I am not 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Pena pulled out. Another fight against Pennington, that would not have been good.
No.
They're friends, apparently, her wife and, Nunes are friends with Pennington and Tisha Torres and, just beating the living crap out of Pennington again. I don't think it was that appealing. Give me Nunes here. It's just a function of, how are you going to build your lineups? How much Nunes are you going to own? What is she going to score? But I certainly do. I do see this being a win by a finish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this one I have very little doubt about. I just don't think Aldana has enough tools to get this done here. But having said that, that is the end of the UFC 289 card, but the beginning of Hot Takes, where if you're new to the show, we grab the juiciest lines we can find that have some chance. We're not just throwing out the plus 1,000s just because. Things that have some chance, but lines that we feel that are a little juiced up that have a chance to come home. I will go first. I kind of alluded to this earlier. My pick is Marc-Andre Barriault finishes your boy Eric Anders at plus 350. Joe, I'm sure, likes that one very much. Maybe he'll even be on the direct opposite side of it. Let's see. But Joe, what is your
I mean,
hot take
my take
today?
isn't a super hot take, but it's something that I feel is extremely realistic and pays 3-1. And it's a bet that I've already made. So my bet that I've already made, and I fully expect to bet more. But the bet that I've made so far is I have Nunes by knockout and Charles Oliveira straight up. And believe it or not, that pays close to 3-1. And I bet enough to win. I bet enough to get 2,000 back at 3-1 on that fight. So I fully expect to bet Charles as the card progresses, depending on how I'm doing. And I've also been doing a lot of Rainmaker, so I've got some kind of lineups that I'm going to be working there as well. But like, you get Nunes by knockout or Nunes by finish. I'm sorry, Nunes by finish and Charles to win. And that was like, I think when I bet it, it was like plus 291. So not a super hot take, but one that I think is highly realistic and has got a very good chance of hitting.
Yeah, no, I like it. Highly realistic and juicy enough. And you wouldn't think something that realistic would be that juicy. So I do like it from that perspective. Chat, let's see your hot takes. Give us a couple. Come on, we only do it once a month, folks. Let's see some hot takes in there. Non, I know I know you got. Well, you did give us. You gave us Barrio, but I already had a Barrio, so that's only one. So let's see some more hot takes. Going once, going twice. All right, we're gonna sell it then. We appreciate you guys listening and watching anyway. We hope that you enjoyed our hot takes and maybe make some money. And Nan is here with the hot take. I'm not sure what this pays.
Inside the distance, okay.
But I'm sure it would be. I'm sure that would be a pretty substantial pay. I'm not exactly sure what it pays, but I'm sure it would be. Sure, it would certainly be worth your money. So once again, I thank everybody for listening and watching. May you all have good luck in your contests tomorrow, and we will see you for the next pay-per-view. Thanks again, everybody.
Peace.